think it's safe to say we can call this one not particularly successful at all. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife, and today I am taking you through what I wanted to read for autumn this year and whether or not I actually read any of them. Now, I had gone in all guns blazing with this TBR. I really wanted to focus on some really great books for the month, but I just didn't particularly gel with many of them. There are some that across these 3 months I didn't even pick up. Let's see how autumn went this year. Starting first with the books that I didn't even pick up at all, and one of those was Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle. Now, I was intrigued by this one, mainly because I actually enjoy stories of religious deconstruction. I really enjoy stories of people like opening their eyes to what is really going on in their life and then striving to change that and striving to go in a different direction. That is something that, weirdly enough, I actually really enjoy reading. But I just never went with this one. And I think that the reason for that is that it's a straight up horror book. I don't reach for a lot of horror. It's not a genre that I'm particularly known to get along well with. So I think I just left this one to the side. The other book that I didn't reach for at all was Fly With Me by Andy Burke. I had plans to read this in August because it would have matched up with the August Buzzwordathon, which was with. But I went in a slightly different direction with that word. I instead went for How to Break Up With Your Phone, and I tied that in with taking a week where I was trying to break away from my phone a little bit, spend a little bit less time on it, and to see if I could take pleasure from other areas of my life. Now, that week went really well, but I think because it went so well, I was so blinkered on How to Break Up With Your Phone that I completely forgot about the other book that I had even put on my sides for that list. So that one has been left unread too. On then to the book that I DNF'd, and that was The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I went a little bit wild at the end of 2024 and bought about 4 Kristen Hanna books that I had never read a single page of, and I had never actually read anything from Kristen Hanna. So I was really playing a gamble as to whether or not I would enjoy it. I tried to read The Women in October, and I really just didn't enjoy it. And I think that that might have been the way that I was reading it. I think that that is a book that I needed to experience as a physical book rather than as an audiobook. But I also gave The Nightingale a try. Now, I went back to it twice. I really did give it my best shot, but I just don't think I got any further than chapter 3 or 4 here. It's an area of history that I really enjoy reading from. I really enjoy reading stories that are set in the Second World War. So this should have been up my alley. And even more so because it is about 2 sisters in World War II living in France. So I really should have enjoyed this one. I just did not gel with this one at all. My other DNF was Murder in the Family by Kara Hunter. I've read Kara Hunter before, so I wasn't really playing a gamble here. I had a feeling I would enjoy this one because I've enjoyed Kara Hunter's writing style before. I've enjoyed the stories that she tells. I really enjoyed the series of hers that I've read previously. And I was also really intrigued by this one because it had a similar kind of a storytelling method to The Appeal by Janice Hallett. That was one of my favorite books from the last 5 years or so. So I was really hopeful that that would drag me in here, and it just didn't. There were so many characters in this book that I just did not care about. And I was sort of intrigued by the idea of solving a 20-year-old murder that is a cold case until now, but there's more evidence is coming to light, and it's going to be made part of a true crime documentary that is happening in the next couple of months. I was intrigued by that part of it, but the actual execution of it just really didn't do anything for me. I feel like the cliffhangers that they were leaving us at the end of the episodes were just a little bit too speculative. They were just a little bit too sensational. They were just a little bit too far-fetched at times. And that just really did not work for me. I really wish that I had gotten along with this one better because I had such high hopes for it, and it just really let me down. And so, in 222 fashion, onto the 2 books that I actually did read from this TBR. The first one that I read was The Wedding People by Alison Esbach. I read this over a week in September, and I had such an interesting time with this. I know that there's a couple of people that this hasn't worked for, but this one really stood with me. This is about Phoebe. She goes away to a luxury hotel in New England with the intention to end her own life. Her personal life and her professional life have gone to shambles, and she really cannot see any way out of what is happening to her. So she heads away to this wonderful inn and decides that this is where she is going to spend her final hours. There is one flaw in her decision though, and that is that Lila has booked out the entire hotel apart from one room that was accidentally not included in the booking, and every single person here is actually a guest at Lila and Gary's wedding. When Lila finds out what it is that Phoebe has got planned, she is determined that nothing is going to ruin her wedding and that nobody is going to make any kind of a show of themselves on the week leading up to her big day. So Lila takes it upon herself to show Phoebe all the joys of life, to involve her in all of the activities, to get her knowing her family, and to meeting all of the guests who were at the wedding. I thought that this was such an interesting novel. There are so many wonderful characters in here that I really enjoyed. I also really enjoyed reading from Juice, who is Gary's young daughter. I think she's about 12 or 13 in this book. And Juice and Lila have a pretty interesting relationship. They aren't particularly best of friends yet, but I didn't get the whole like stepmother, stepdaughter vibes that you would get from Cinderella, for example. I thought that it was a really interesting kind of warming to her by the end of the week. I loved watching Phoebe and Juice get to know one another, and they would drive around and do some of the errands that Lila and Gary and Lila's family had put together that a wedding needed. I thought that it was so interesting to see Juice just open up to somebody in a way that I don't think she would have with her parents. This is a pretty heart-wrenching book to read at times. Of course, given what is going on in Phoebe's life, there are a couple of mentions of suicidal ideation, of suicide attempt is shown on the page. There are some really heartbreaking moments in here as well, but there's other things that are just devastating to read. There is an incident of animal death in this book, and that was truly devastating for me to read, particularly because it was just such a peaceful death. It's the kind of death that you would wish for your own pet to have, but that didn't stop it from being absolutely heart-stopping for a couple of seconds. I also thought that the topic of infertility, infidelity, divorce, all of those topics were dealt with in such a wonderfully respectful and loving way. I thought that it was written with so much tact, so much heart, so much respect, but also quite a lot of humor was in there as well. The transformation in Phoebe throughout the entire week was something that I really enjoyed reading. It wasn't done in a really in-your-face type of way. It was very subtle, it was very slow, and I feel like that is the kind of recovery that a lot of people will go through if they are struggling with their mental health, if they are struggling with suicidal ideation. I feel like the recovery of that isn't immediate and they're not going to wake up one morning and immediately feel better. I feel like that kind of a slow, dawning realization that things are starting to slowly get back to track and starting to become okay again. I think that that was written really well. It wasn't immediate, it wasn't in your face. It was done at a pace that I was pretty happy with. I think this is Alison Espach's debut novel. I think that she's got another one coming out in 2026. And if she does, I am definitely going to go and pick it up. I really enjoyed the writing style in here because it perfectly married this humor that you've got in some of the scenes with some of the really heartbreaking and poignant stuff that you've got going on in here as well. I was so hooked by this book, and I'm definitely going to check out anything else that she's got coming up. After saying it for so long, I think I spent the entirety of 2025 saying that I would read this book. I finally picked up The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. This was my third Freida McFadden book by the time I had gotten to it, and I kind of knew what to expect with her, but still, I went in here and was completely hoodwinked by so much of this stuff. This book follows Millie. She has been in prison for the last 10 years and has been living in her car for about a month or so, and her fortunes are really starting to turn down. But she's just gotten a job for the Winchesters, working as their housemaid and their nanny and living in the house with them. The room that she's in is pretty sparsely decorated, it's quite dark, and it's quite small, but it's a lot bigger than the car that she has been living in for the last month, so who is she to complain? Over her time with the Winchesters, Millie starts to notice a couple of things that aren't sitting particularly well with her. She's noticing what Nina is like with her husband. She's noticing how snappy Nina can be, and how when Andrew is just trying to placate her, and how when Andrew is just trying to placate her, Nina will still kick off over the smallest things. Andrew and Millie kind of bond over becoming this shared target that they believe that Nina has on their backs, and they begin to have an affair. When the affair comes to its head and Nina figures out what is going on, things start to really ramp up from there. I was no way expecting the direction that the second half of this book would go, and I think I enjoyed the second half of it even more than I did the first half. In the first half of this book, I found Nina quite hard to read, and I think that that is because of the narration that we have. We're seeing everything from Millie's eyes, and we are learning what kind of person Nina is from the interactions that Millie is having with her. But when we actually read Nina's side of the story and when we realize why it is that she is doing the things that she is doing, it made so much more sense. And reading Nina's own story was so much more interesting than what we had been reading previously. I was utterly hooked by this book. It has been such a long time since I was so gripped by a book that I read the entire thing in one day, but I could not put this book down. I read the entire thing in one day, ate it up whole, and then instantly went out to look for The Housemaid's Secret. That was also a quite good book. I think in that instance, I actually preferred the first half of the book to the second half of it, and I still have got The Housemaid is Watching to go and pick up, and I am so intrigued by that one. I know as well that there is an adaptation of The Housemaid coming out in the next couple of months, I think. Let's see how that adaptation is going to go. That is my progress report for what was admittedly a quite dismal autumn reading TBR. How did your autumn reading go? Was there anything that you had your sights on when you went into the season, and have you actually managed to get them read? If you would love to leave me a comment but you can't think of anything you'd like to say, then just leave me the autumn leaves emoji. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.